Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, this is my little corner of the internet where I share with you guys how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. My name is Kristen and I am the maker behind DoSoKnits, and thank you for coming here today. So a couple weeks ago I posted a video about my Ravelry queue and how I use it to organize the stash that I have into projects that I may want to make. And I got a lot of comments on that video saying you guys would love to know how I use my stash, how I track it, and what I do to get it to use it in Ravelry. So today I'm going to take you with me a little bit. I have some yarns that I have acquired that I need to add into my Ravelry stash. And I'll take you through how I do that, and then we can go into a little more details about what having your Ravelry stash can unlock for you when you have it on there. So every month when I get yarn in, when I buy yarn and bring it into my stash, I keep it in a separate basket. You can kind of see it peeking out right there. I keep it in a separate basket until I can take photos of it to put in my Ravelry stash. I always try to take a photo of my stash when they are in new skein form. That's kind of what I call it, new skeins. And then I try to take an updated photo of yarns after I've used it, because then I can update how many grams I used in connection to the project page, and that'll just automatically update how many yards and how many grams and how much yarn you used, so that you can be a better community project page poster. Basically what I'm saying is, like, for recently I finished a pair of socks. They were shorty socks and I think I used about 60 grams. So then if other people can go and say, oh, I do really like those socks. Oh, they only used 60 grams. They didn't use a full skein. Because if you think you need a full skein, you may not think you can complete the project. But I only use 60 grams. So someone may be able to go and say, oh, I can make a pair of socks that are similar to that with some leftovers. Or if you're looking at a sweater that might have color work, if you can track more accurately how many grams you used, it can help other knitters who may have leftovers or scraps know, okay, well, if they only use 12 grams for the actual contrast color, then I don't need to go buy a new skein of yarn. I can use something that I already have. So that's why I like to do that. I think it helps connect other people to see, okay, this is how much they actually used in this project, because you may not need a full skein of yarn. So that is why I do that, and I find it very helpful, especially even for me. Looking back, I can go and see, okay, I only need 55 grams for socks for myself. I have small feet, so maybe I don't need to buy full skeins of yarn if a 50-gram skein is available. So that's one benefit already of what I think of tracking stash. So, like I said, I got off on a little tangent there, but I put all of my yarn that I bring in a separate basket until I can take photos of it. I'm also tracking my stash in, so that's also a way for me to like make sure I've notated the stash that I've brought in, full skeins and grams, before I tuck it away in these shelves. So let me show you how I add these skeins into my stash and what I do. So what I will be doing, I will be using Ravelry. I'll be screen recording my phone, so I apologize if you cannot access Ravelry or look at it. It is what I'm using for this. Sometimes I do use the Ravelry app, but I find the mobile version of Ravelry.com to be the most effective way to do this process. So let's move over to my Lightbox and I'll show you guys what I have. So I'm over here now at my Lightbox. This was just something I got on Amazon for about $20, maybe $30. I'll have it linked down below, but it's just really nice because you can have a white background with it, and then I can turn the light on and all of my yarns can be photographed with a simple white background. I used to just take photos of them on my floor, or then I started doing it on a shelf on my bookcase, but it always just seemed difficult to find a place to do it, and my organized brain really wanted a continuous, normal, clean background, and the white shows off the colors of your yarn pretty well. So I bought the Lightbox, and it's served me really well as we've moved from living in Germany to living in a hotel to living in an apartment, and now in our house. I have a consistent background with consistent lighting, because sometimes I do this really late at night and then I wouldn't get a true color representation of the yarn. So this is my little plug for my Lightbox. I love it, and I know it's a little bit of a splurge to just take photos of yarn with it, but I It brings me joy and value to what I do, so I really, really like it. Okay, so you're definitely getting a little bit different view of my office today, but this is where my Lightbox is. So this is my basket that I was talking about. This is all the yarns that I have bought this month. Actually, not all of it is. Some of it I've just pulled aside. But I try to keep it in a contained place to then make sure that I can update my photos. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my Ravelry, and I'm going to start my screen recording. Okay, so I'm in my Ravelry. You know, you can click your little profile picture and then go to Stash. And so then you can see all of my stash that I have here. I like to sort my stash by the date I added it, because then if I don't exactly remember if I've taken my photos yet, I can see what I have and what I haven't. And like, I know these Life in the Long Grass I've added, so if they were accidentally still in this basket, I would know what yarn to start with. So it's really nice. So what I do there's two different ways that you can kind of do it. If you have yarn that you've stashed before, so I have my Viso yarn, which is a base that I've used before. You can go and stash more of that yarn, and so it's pretty easy. Or if it's something new, like this Dream State, I've not added this to my stash before, so I'll show you guys what I do. So I click Add to Stash. If you know where you bought it, like a local yarn store, an online store, chain store, this is just some extra information to have. Sometimes it doesn't always really matter. Usually I just click online store if I bought it online. And it's just nice if you ever want a reference of where you bought it from, you can add it in there. So the name of this stash yarn, and so the name is the base, and then the brand of the yarn. Normally something will pop up for the brand, so you can just click it. And then if you know where you bought it from, this is optional, you can add it. I normally don't. So you can see this is a little finicky because it's saying, oh, nothing in the database exists. So it's actually, there's a space in Dream State. You can click search again and it will pop up. Once you're on this screen, if you're still having a lot of troubles, if you know the brand, you can just kind of back out the base. You can hit search again and it kind of pulls up all the different bases, which is kind of helpful. On that first screen, you have to put a base and a brand in order for it to let you go to the next page. So I found that sometimes I'll just fib, because sometimes it's hard, especially with indie dyers, you may not know exactly what they're calling their base. So this is a way, once you have the brand, you can then, oh, it's that. Maybe I misspelled it, maybe I just misunderstood. So I just clicked the base and then it took me to this page. And so this has created my yarn stash in Ravelry. So what I add, there's so many options here, but I'll tell you what I found to be the most effective and organized for me. So I always add the colorway. So we're starting first with Rusted Rainbow. So you can start typing. I have to scroll a little bit. And if other people have added this colorway into their stash, it should be there so I can select it. If you want to add color attributes, you can. So there's so many options here. I usually don't do this. But I will always add this yards per grams per skein. Normally this auto fills yards and grams if that yarn was already in there. If any of these are missing, I highly, highly suggest adding them, because then you'll be able to track your gram usage in projects and when you use your yarn. So I'll just add this in here. These are 100 gram skeins. So I'll just add 100 grams. So I always make sure I have yards, grams, and then I type the amount of skeins. So I have 2 of these Rusted Rainbow skeins. Usually if a yarn is already in the database, it will already have yards and grams, so I'm surprised that this one doesn't. So again, if you'd like to add where you purchase it at, you can. So for instance, I bought this from Farmer's Daughter, and if you click search, so I can click that. I always include the month and year that I bought the yarn. So you can, if you know the exact day, you can, but when you go to click on this little calendar, it pops up, and if you just click, I don't know the exact day, it'll default to the month and day. So just January 2023. And then if you'd like to put how much you paid for it, you can. I like to do this in case I ever destash yarn. And I always do per skein. So technically I bought 2 skeins, but I always do per skein just because that's my consistent system across all of my yarns. I always just do what I paid for one. Then there's other things in here if you'd like. You can add dye lots, you can add tags. So I don't know, you can set up tags however you want. I don't use them very much in Ravelry. And then the stored in is nice. So say you had like your shelf here, you had maybe bins under your bed, maybe you have a bin in the closet. You can type in like, oh, this is in closet, bin 2. I also don't do that because all my yarn's kind of in one spot. So the main things I add are the amount of skeins, purchase date, price paid, and the color. I also always add a photo. So I click add photo, choose files, camera. I'm using an Android, by the way. I turn my Lightbox on, as you can see, and I just take a little quick photo of my yarn. I always do a square photo because it fits a little better in Ravelry. So I just do a nice little photo there. My Lightbox makes it really clean, really shows the colors really well, and I don't have to like change any settings or anything. So then I just hit OK. You have to click upload, and you have to wait for it to like finish before you can click away. I'm gonna turn my Lightbox off while we wait. So you can see my photo has been uploaded, and we'll click done. Sometimes on this screen it doesn't show the photo right away, but then if you click save, you can see here's my yarn. You can see that it's in my stash, it's not for sale, dream state, 2 skeins, where I bought it from, and the amount. So that is all there. So then I was saying what's really nice is if you have the same base and you want to like continue doing this, this is why I try to batch this, you can just click stash more. And what's really helpful is it already has dream state, spin cycle, and an online store filled out. You can click continue. I just have to add my colorway, so this one is Shades of Earth. Shades of Earth. Again, and every time it won't have this grams since it's not linked in Ravelry. 100 grams, I have 2 skeins. It even kept where you bought it from because it's assuming. I bought it in January, I paid $34. And then I need to add my photo. And normally when I take photos, I'll just take a photo of one of the skeins, just because it's a bit easier. If I ever need to destash, I have one photo, but since spin cycle is so different, I'm just gonna take photos of both. So we've taken that photo, we can upload, and usually while it's uploading, that's when I like take my yarn, I put it to the side out of this basket, I'll grab the next one, I'll get ready. So I can click done, I can hit save, and then we'll do it again. So this time the color is Salty Dog. And this one I do actually have 2, but I pulled one to start my swatch yesterday, but I wanted to record this video. So you guys are holding me accountable to do this, so all the same information. I'm gonna add my photo, camera, take a quick photo, click OK, and upload. And this is where it can get tricky. I accidentally clicked the file name and then it erased it. So that is one of like Ravelry's little bugs. It's kind of annoying, but it's okay. So we'll take that photo, click OK, click upload, and then we wait. So it's pretty easy once you get your stash going. And then we can click done and save. So now I can go to my stash and you can see all of these new yarns are right at the top. You can see here I accidentally didn't update. I have 2 skeins. This is what I get for multitasking. Okay, we can click save. Okay, so then I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna add a couple more skeins. I have some Viso from Desert Vista Dye Works that I've got. I have 4 skeins here, so I'll probably add these really quick. I'll leave my screen recorder on so you guys can see. I might not talk a lot unless anything crazy happens, but let's put on some music and let's add these skeins. So what I'll probably do is I can either go to my stash and search for Viso, and then I can click one, click stash more. Or you can click add to stash from that normal screen, search for like we had. But if I do it this way, it already imports the base and the brand, which is nice. And then I can just start adding. And I have found it pretty common with like Desert Vista Dye Works because she has so many colors that not all of them pull up here. So if you don't find it from the drop down, you can just type all of it yourself. And this is where if you wanted to add that it's a self-striping, you can, because I think you can search your stash in Ravelry with that information. So we have 1 skein, and you can see here the grams and yards are already imported. We have that for uploading. Stash more. Next color. So you can see it's pretty easy once you know like what information you want to add. You can do it pretty easily. I think just as long as you're consistent. I think the most important thing is just making sure you enter in how many skeins you have. I like to also really make sure that I have the colorway and the price paid just in case I ever need that information. And I think having dye lots, if you buy a lot of like the same yarn over and over multiple times, you can stash different quantities. So say you bought 10 skeins in one dye lot of one color. You can add that 10 skeins as a listing, and then you can add 10 more skeins, same color, different dye lot, as a separate listing. It doesn't have to all be the same, which I think is really nice. So then I wanted to show you what I do with leftovers from a project. So I finished my unicorn frappuccino socks last night. You can see I stuck my needles in here to bring up. It also kind of goes in this basket to put away. So this is how much of this yarn that I have left. So I want to show you how I do that with my stash and what I do. So I find the most important is I have a scale in here to track how many grams are left over from this yarn, but I'll show you how I update that project page. So I'm going to actually go to my projects and then find the project page for these socks. I do need to update some things in here, update when I finished it, etc. I will change this to a finished, and then I finished them last night while we're in here. Might as well update it really quick. And then I just click save. I have found the easiest way to update the amount of yarn used for a project is you go to the project page, and if you scroll down and if you've linked your yarn, it'll be listed here. And I'll show you how to do that next. Now that I have my spin cycle in, I'll show you how I create a project page. But I've already done this. So you can see this is the base, how many meters I have in stash. You can set your Ravelry up to be meters or yards. I do meters. So if you click the how many meters or yards, it takes you to my stash page. So then what I do is I scroll down to this adjust quantity. When you click it, you can see it links, oh, this is the project that you have linked to this yarn, and you can say how many skeins or grams or meters that you used. I say how many grams I used, and then I take this yarn and I weigh it on my scale. I weigh it in grams, and so I have 51.4 grams left. And since I put in how many skeins I had at the beginning, you can also adjust when you put your yarn in if you want to weigh each one. I find that a little too tedious. So I can say, since I have 51.2 grams left, that means I used 48.6. 48.6. And you can see it does the little math right here, how much is left. This is fluctuating with how much I have left. Okay. Scale says 51.2, my total remaining says 51.2. That is a little skewed because I did put it into my cozy memories, but it's close enough. So I can preview those changes. You can see what it then does the math, like, oh, you're using this many skeins, this many grams, this many meters, and this many yards. But you can just click confirm. And then you can see now that I stashed one skein and that I used that I have 0.2 remaining. This project right here used 48 grams and 221 yards. So I find that super helpful. So then I just want to update this photo. And I do this just in case I want to know what it looks like. I want to know maybe if I want to destash it, I don't have to like go rambling and then take a new photo. I already have the yarn here, so I might as well take the photo. So I click update photos, choose files, same thing, camera, put it in the Lightbox, put it in, take a quick photo, click OK, and then I can upload it. Well, and then you exit out accidentally. So you can see that photo's uploaded. I can click done. And there it is. Now that's the first photo for this yarn. I just stick the tag in here. And now since I've added this to my cozy memories, I can put it in my leftover stash bin. So that's how you can update that. And so now if I go back to this project page, and if you scroll down, you can see it's also linked here, okay? This is the yarn you used. I have 220 meters left in the stash now. I used 0.48 skeins of yarn, 202 meters, how many yards? So like, if anyone wants to know, looking like, okay, those are cute short socks, how much yarn did they actually use? I used less than 50 grams, so you could buy a 50-gram skein if that's an option. So that is that. So then I just want to show you how I start a new project using my stash yarn. So I'm gonna scroll to the top. If I had EZV in my queue, I could do that, but I don't because this is a new cast on. So I'm going to go to Ravelry. I'm going to search for EZV. Click the pattern. I actually need to save this in my favorites really quick. And then I'm going to click Cast On Project. So if you have it in your queue, you can cast on the project from your queue and have it delete from your queue, or you can cast on directly from a project page like I'm doing. So I can just click Cast On. You can change the name of the project if you'd like. I normally name mine just the name of the project unless it's something like these socks that I do every month. So then we can go in and edit our project. So I swatched last night, so I guess technically I started it last night. I don't know much information yet, I've only just swatched, but what I'm scrolling down to is my use the yarn section. So if you don't have your yarns in Ravelry, you can manually go in and add them, but you have to do that whole process that we just did. It can be, I think, a little more cumbersome. But if you click use stash yarn, it automatically links to my stash. So then what I can do is I can search for the yarns I want to use. So my main color is this merino garn, or I have trouble finding this one because it's just pretty simple. Let me see. Oh, sorry. Nature. It's this one. Merino Nature Garn. And I'm using this dark brown. So I just click use. And then I can click use stash. We can search for Dream State. And we do have to click each one individually, so I'll add that. And you can also search by the name of the color. So I know the next color is Shades of Earth. Search, pops up. Use stash yarn, and we want to add Salty Dog. So you can search by base, brand, or color. So you can see Salty Dog, I have both Dyed in the Wool and Dream State, so make sure I select the right one. And so that's basically all the information I have right now. So I can click save. I've imported my start date, my pattern, and the yarns that I'm using with this. And so the nice thing is as I'm working on it, at the end, I can then update how much I used of each of these, like I did with my Desert Vista Dye Works socks. So I find that super helpful. So yeah, that's basically how I add yarns to my Ravelry stash, and then how I track my Ravelry projects once I finish them, and then how I add the yarn to my Ravelry projects for new ones. So overall, I just find this really helpful because if I ever know that I have a sweater, say it's DK weight and I don't know what yarn I want to use, I can then go into my stash. You can search your stash based on weight and you can find yarns that might work. So let me show you some of the ways you can like use and search your stash in Ravelry. So, okay, so when you're in Ravelry, so say you need a worsted weight sweater with 1,000 yards or so. You can go to your stash and you can sort by weight of yarn and it pops up everything in here. You can then rearrange by, let's say, most yardage, because you know you want a sweater's worth. And so then you can see the yardage of different sweaters that I have. In the mobile view, you can also click these little black things and it will rotate. So how many meters, how many skeins, how many grams, how many ounces, and yards. I usually keep this on yards. I find it the most helpful. You then also, if you ever want to destash yarn, which is what I use on Ravelry as well, say you wanted to destash this yarn, you could click it, you could click edit, and change this yarn from in stash to willing to trade or sell. So you can see when you go back to your stash, I have at the top my other different categories. So I can add my fiber in here. I've added some of my Nubays. You can see for the one I did not weigh it. If you ever use up a yarn completely, once you, let's say you did these socks and then you did another project and say then it was like basically gone, you can go in and click all used up, and it will move it out of your stash and into this separate category. So you can see here, these are all yarns I no longer have remnants of. They've all been used up. And you see for a while here, I did not retake photos. For example, like this Spin Cycle Dream State, I had nothing left over to actually take a photo of, so it's fine. But this Knit Picks Wool the Andes, I used that little extra bit for some darning, and so I just said, it's all used up, I don't have it anymore. But you can also go to Will Trade or Sell. And so this is where all of my D-stash lives. I can update, so you can go and you can see I kind of still have my photos. I'm saying I'd sell it, and then I put in the notes what I would sell it for. So I find that super helpful as well. And then say when you sell or trade or gift something, you can move it into this section, so then it's still out of your stash. So that is how I use all of that. I find it super helpful, and I like to keep it by date added. I like to use the white background because I think it looks pretty clean, and I find it a lot easier, especially when I find a new pattern. If I don't know exactly if I have yarn in my stash for it, I can go and I can look very easily because it's done the math of what 10 skeins of Wool the Andes is. I can go and see if I have enough yardage to make that sweater. And then if you haven't seen my Ravelry queue video, I will add projects to my queue with the yarns I've selected, so then I know like this yarn has been paired with this project and it's all linked together. So then if I ever go to a yarn that I know is linked, let me see if I can find one. So we know the Dream State is linked to a project. I can click this yarn and say like, oh, maybe I do want to use it for this other sweater. I can go and I can click this, but then you can see it's linked to this EZV project. I also, since that's already a project, I think like it's definitely linked to projects. I'm unsure if it'll link to queues. So let me see if I can find one that's linked to a queue. So this yarn I said I was going to use for a hat, and say I'm like, oh, this DK would actually be perfect for this other pattern. I can click this, but you can see I have this queued. I have it assigned to another project. So then I could decide, well, I did decide I wanted to use it for this Lisle cap, or do I want to use it for this new project that I've found? If I do I still actually want to make this Lisle cap? In my case, that would be yes, because it's a project gift for my brother. I would then either have to decide, okay, do I find different yarn for Lisle cap, or do I have to go find different yarn for this project that I found? So I find that super helpful, because then you're not necessarily, like, you know you've linked yarns to projects, and it's not like you're gonna forget. You might decide to do something different, but you have it written down. Oh, I have this kind of assigned. It's always up for interpretation. I can always change, but it is good to just like get it out of my brain as well. I find helpful, so that way I don't have to like keep it in my head like, oh, this yarn is with this project and this yarn is with this project. Oh, what yarn was this? What project was this yarn for? I have it all written down. I have it all in my stash, and anyone can go and look at it and see kind of what my plans are. So I find that helpful. I've said that many times. I hope you found this video helpful with how I use my Ravelry stash. There are many other stash options and features that you can use when you have it in there. You can advanced search, and there is an export option where it will export all the yarn that you have in your Ravelry database into an Excel sheet. Some people find that a little more useful. They can track things a little differently. I really like Ravelry Stash feature, and I use it kind of as it is. I don't necessarily use all the features. I don't use all the tags or the attributes of the yarn. But if you do, you could then search my stash for self-striping yarn, and you know, you can use it to the amount that you want to. And I have found the way that works for me, which is just tracking the amount of grams total that I have and how many I use per each project, how many skeins I have, and then how many grams I use in a project. And I like having my Lightbox to make the photos look really nice, and it just makes it look uniform throughout. But yeah, that is basically the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful. Do you use your Ravelry Stash, or does this inspire you to want to try and use the Ravelry Stash feature? I will admit it does take a little bit to set up if you don't have it set up already, or if you have a large stash, but I do feel like there are many benefits from having all of my yarn in my Ravelry stash. It's a lot easier to sometimes search through. Sometimes I'll just go to my stash page and I'll just scroll through the photos of the yarn that I have, because sometimes, even though I have it all in a bookshelf, I can forget, and sometimes the photos are more helpful and I'm like, oh yeah, I do have that yarn and I do want to use it. And yeah, like I said, I find it really helpful to link to projects or add them to my queue. So I hope this inspires you. Let me know if you use Ravelry Stash, or if there's any questions you may have about the stash. I'll try to answer them down below for you. I'm not a super expert, but this is just how my system is and how I use it. So I hope you found it helpful, and I will see you guys again very soon. I hope you've put a little bit of love in every stitch of your making. Thank you for clicking, thank you for watching, and thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today. I will see you guys again very soon. Bye.